Wow. Okay. I thought I've been talking. Anyway, hey, technology. I've been talking away for the last few minutes. Anyway, welcome to the First Fruits Stock Club, another episode. Yeah, welcome to another episode. All right. All right, cool. So look, get right into it. So today's episode is basically how to retire off of dividends, right? How to retire off of dividends. And isn't something like theoretical. This is something I've done. Okay. Basically, I'm financially retired off of dividends and passive income, right? And I haven't made a decision. I'm going to keep on going, and working, all right? But I have options. In this economy, you need options. Financial options is what you need. All right. And man, I had a great opportunity to speak at a conference this weekend, and people wanted to know about dividends. I was telling everyone, look, I generate this amount a this amount in dividends, and I basically retire myself, right? Financially. All right. I haven't quit my job. I don't plan on to. I love what I do. But if anything happens in this economy, if anything happens, you need to have another source of income, right? Just to get back to a story, I was a real estate investor, right? I exited maybe 2 years ago, my last property. And, the thing about it is I became successful as a real estate investor, successful in real estate, right? And the funny thing about it is people think because you invest in real estate, you have all this money, which is not true, right? Let's be honest. It's not true. Matter of fact, I remember the day when I told my wife, I said, look, we are currently millionaires. And she was like, okay, what's that mean? I said, well, we're millionaires. We have a net worth of millions. She said, all right, well, where's the money? She said, where's the money at, Donald? I said, yeah. I said, Donald, where's the money? Right? I really had to have a discussion with myself because I had all these properties, all these expenses, all these tenants, all these electric bills, all these mortgages, right? But no, all the stress, no money, right? No money. Like, what are we doing? So I had to really sit down and think about, okay, what do I need to do? And my wife said, look, it's time, right? You didn't held these properties. I don't know how you did it. You know what I mean? Dealing with all the issues and not really generating a lot of money, but you did it. So I think it's time for you to exit. And I started exiting my properties. And some I will make, a nice amount of money. And some I had to reinvest the capital to fix them up to sell them. Right. But my last property, my best property, and my commercial, it became very profitable for me. Right. So then the decision is, I don't have any more real estate. What do I do now to generate money? Right. Because I have this lump sum of cash. Like, I don't want to spend the cash. What can I do next? So I started investing in the stock market, which is great. But the stock market can be inconsistent, right? It can be inconsistent, and you got to just sit there and wait and hold. And that's fine. You should do that. And I always have a long-term hold portfolio. But then I started doing some more research. I said, oh, you know what? My dividends can act like what my rents should have act like. My goal for the rents was my rents would come in and it would take over my household bills. But no says mortgages, no says tenants that don't pay and got to go to court, no says electric bill. I had a bunch of electric bills. No says, no, right? And maybe I'm not the greatest manager, right? I self-manage. Maybe I'm not the greatest manager. I've also had managers too. But it just seemed it didn't work out. Like, I don't know why. It just did not work out. And I've talked to other investors who've had the same. But real estate, I think, and yes, you can cash flow, but I think the best way to earn money in real estate is when you sell, right? that leverage, you're basically leveraging your money and basically compounding it over time. And then over time, your tenants pay down your mortgage, right? And therefore, so basically, I exited, right? But I was like, what next? What's next? And next became what I'm going to talk about today. All right. So let me get into this real quick. So disclaimer before I get into detail. So the information provided by the First Fruit Stock Club podcast is for education and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial investment, tax, or legal advice. The views expressed by the host and the guests and their own do not reflect the opinions of any financial institution or regulatory authority. Investing in stocks and securities carry risk, including the potential of loss of principal. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Always conduct your own research and consult investment decisions. The First Fruit Stock Club and its affiliates do not guarantee any specific outcomes or returns. All right? All right. Great. So I was like, man, what can I do? Like, how can I make passive income, really? Right? And man, I came across dividend stocks. Man, I get dividends basically almost every day. I get a check, I get a deposit every day. All right. So I'm gonna tell you what you need to start this snowball, right? Of dividends, getting paid every day. Right? And you retire yourself is if you earn a multiple of your salary, whatever it is. Me, I'm like 2 to 3 times from dividend income. And, so therefore, financially, I'm considered retired, right? And I have savings. My wife and I fought, but I was like, look, we're gonna live debt free. All right. We're gonna live debt free, and what we have, we'll pay for. So we have no debt outside of the house. So therefore, and still things come up, right? I have kids, whatever. Still things come up, right? But but being debt free and having income coming in, then you really create this momentum and this snowball where you can make some decisions about your household, right? So what do we need? What do we need to start this to retire early on dividends? We need a portal, right? A portal. And to define dividends is a return on capital from the money earned from a corporation. When a corporation will earn money, for example, McDonald's will sell a bunch of burgers. They'll generate a bunch of money from burgers and also from the leases that they have and all other aspects of revenue that the McDonald's corporation uses to generate money. And from that, they pay you as a shareholder a percentage, right? So McDonald's will have a bunch of shares outstanding, and they may pay $1, $2, $3 per share, right? And that money is your money in your pocket. So how do you get that money? You need a portal, right? And a portal is a brokerage account, right? You need to open a brokerage account. Simple, right? You can start a brokerage account up to $25. I use E-Trade. E-Trade has been around for a long time. There's Robinhood, of course. There's a bunch of I use E-Trade and Charles Schwab. I have them both. And so you need a portal. So in this portal, right, you have to buy a particular company. And what really accelerated my my passive income journey is buying funds, right? Right. So you start out with buying sound stocks. Okay, you start out with buying sound stocks, right? And then you create a portfolio of also funds. There are funds out there that will pay you every month, right? They'll pay you every month, right? So open up a brokerage account and starting to buy those funds, and they pay you every month, right? So then, right, and when you get paid, they'll pay you every month, and then they'll deposit the money inside the brokerage account. So you'll have a stock, and then you'll have a cash balance. It'll show you a cash balance at the bottom. And It'll also let you know the transactions that occur. So it'll show you. You'll actually, when you set it up with E-Trade, I get emails. They send me a text message. Dividend paid. I wake up, dividend paid. It's lovely. No tenants, no toilets, right? I didn't have to start a business, no customers. I'm not saying anything is wrong with any of that stuff, right? But for those of you who don't want to do that, but still want extra income, right? Setting up a dividend portfolio is a great way to take your finances to the next level. It's a great way to do it. All right. So then you have to, so to understand, also, you need to understand your personal budget, right? If you don't know what your goal is, right? You don't know what you're shooting towards, right? You need to know what you're shooting towards. And if you're not good at budgeting, man, hire a bookkeeper, right? Hire a bookkeeper and find out what your budget is and find out how you can get money into that brokerage account, right? There's always things to cut back on. And it's a decision, right? You got to decide, hey, I'm going to cut back here and I'm going to take whatever's here. You hook up your bank account to the E-Trade or the brokerage account, and you just transfer money into that account, right? You transfer money into that account. And then once you transfer money into that account, then you take the money into the account and you purchase a stock that's paying a dividend. And what I like to do is align the stocks out. So you have the companies, you have McDonald's pay three periods a year, 3 different months. And then you have another stock. I like Starbucks too. And I like Coca-Cola. And what happens is they all pay differently at different times of the year. So basically you can schedule them out so you have received, and those stocks usually pay quarterly, right? So you want to have basically where the companies are paying you dividends every month by aligning those companies, right? So you own a share of McDonald's, it's going to pay you $1 or whatever, per quarter. Coca-Cola will pay you on these particular dates, and so on and so on. The companies will pay you on these particular dates. And when you align the dates up, it equals out to a whole year, right? So you'll receive income every year, just like every month, just like your salary at your job, right? And then you continue to build that out, right? You build it out. And like I said, there are funds now that will pay you even more. All right. But you have to know how to use those funds. You got to know what funds to buy, and you need to know the price. I'm not going to go all into that right now or today. But you need to have that. And they can accelerate you financially where you can replace your current income. And I'm not saying you have to quit or anything. Everybody quit your job. No, I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to continue to take my income and put it into this system, this market system, right? Where I didn't create the business. I didn't come up with the idea. All I did is put my money up. Right? But the hardest thing in America today, right, with consumption is how not to spend all your money. And that's where that budget and that's where that bookkeeper comes in. So they can break down, hey, you're spending this on this month, and this month. The bookkeeper can break that down for you and let you know, hey, let's cut here, or your accountant, but mostly a bookkeeper, because a bookkeeper can go into your bank statement and tell you, look, you're eating out way too much. Hey, 1 meal less. All right, we take that 1 meal, say the meal you're spending $50, $100. We take that extra $100 and put it into the brokerage account, and that's how you can win, right? That's how you can win, and that's what we want to do to win. So look, if you feel like that you have interest, right, in developing a dividend portfolio, I'm going live on YouTube and I'm live on Facebook. Just go into my DMs and DM me and say I'm interested, right? Say I'm interested, and I will show you how to develop a brokerage account that will pay you monthly dividends, right? And it's important in this economy that we're in now. You don't know, you don't know what's going on. You know, especially, you know, now the government shut down. You have to prepare, right? You have to prepare. You stay prepared. I have this success, but I'm still preparing. I'm trying to get far, far away from any issues, right? That's basically continue to invest, continue to save, making sure that, you know, yeah, and you still want to live life. So maybe you take some of it and you travel a little bit, whatever, right? You know, but for the most part, you want to be reinvesting your dividends, putting it in an account and build out your account, right? And it's liquid, right? You don't have to ask anybody for it. If you want to get the money, you can withdraw the money from your account, right? And deposit into your bank account, transfer it into your bank account. And that was the issue I had. I had all the real estate and it looked good on paper, but I was broke. And not only broken, right? Because I'm like, man, I'm doing I thought I was doing the right thing. It's like in life, sometimes we think we're doing the right thing, but we're not getting the right result. But we don't want to take a different direction. You have to be honest with yourself. Whether you're a high income individual or you're a low income individual, you need to be honest with yourself and say, I need to make some different decisions. So I'm here every week. This is what I'm going to be on, you know, until the end of the year when we close out the year in the state. But look, man, the stock market is booming. I thought September was going to be September is usually a weaker month, but I always stay invested. Now I might held a little bit extra cash. And look, let me tell you this, and I didn't say this. Not only can you have a dividend income, but guess what? You can take that income and invest in options, right? And you can have an option contract as little as $100 to $200. You can buy options and that's all you're putting up. And you can turn that 100 and 200 to an extra $100 or $200. Now, if you really want to, you know, get it, you can put, you know, have 1,000. You can build up your option contracts. You buy contracts, right? Right. It's a whole strategy with that also. But it becomes liquid, right? It's liquid. There is some risk involved. There's nothing, you know, there's some risk involved. But it's risky having a job and no second income, right? Unfortunately, we have government workers out there who have that issue, right? And it's not cool. So that's why I'm here. I'm not here. You know, I feel bad. You know that they had to go through that. You know, hopefully the government resolves this soon. But we've been through this before. But you know, you can maybe decide to make a different decision. Maybe I need to look at some different things, right? You know. So man, thank you guys for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I'm going to be talking about this, how to retire on dividends, right? And that's my focus. So until next time, I am Donald Green, the founder of the First Fruit Stock Club. Man, be fruitful. Thank you very much. Bye bye.